Welcome to the second Unit 3 review packet video. In this video, we'll be covering topic 7D. Number 22. In a complete sentence, explain what is wrong with the given diagram. Taking the same approach I have with all the other ones, I'm going to start by highlighting my transversal and my parallel lines. They're showing me that this angle is 56 and this angle is 114. What angle pair these make, and then see if these two angles meet the relationship that they're supposed to have. 56 and 114 are both outside of the parallel lines and on the same side of the transversal. So these are supposed to be same side exterior angles. Exterior angles should be supplementary, meaning they add to 180. However, if you add 56 and 114, you will get 170. The problem is, these should have been supplementary same-side exterior angles if these lines were parallel. However, there is not. These two angles would have to add up to 180 in order for the diagram to be correct. Find the value of x that makes J parallel to K and name which theorem or postulate is used to prove it. The difference between the regular version and the converse is that the converse is used to show lines are parallel, where the regular version, or the conditional, is used when you already know the lines are parallel. For 23, 24, 25, and 26, it does not say anywhere that these lines are parallel. Instead, it's asking us to find the value that would make them parallel. That means that for all of these, we will be using the converse of the appropriate theorems. For 23, these two angles are corresponding. They're both in the top right of their intersections, which means same position. Corresponding angles should be congruent, so we need to write an equation to figure out the value of x that would make them congruent. To solve, first I'll subtract the 7 to get this 5x by itself. That'll give me x plus 36 equals 5x. Then subtract the x from both sides in order to get the x's together. 5x minus x would be 4x. Finally, we'll divide by 4 to get x equals 9. This is the value of x that made them congruent. Now I have to name the postulate. Earlier I identified these as corresponding angles, so my postulate is going to be converse corresponding angles postulate, or CAP. For number 24. I'll highlight my parallels and my transversal. These two angles are inside the parallel lines and on the same side of the transversal. All same side angle pairs are supplementary, so I need to find the value of x that would make these add up to 180. To do that, I'll write the equation 4x plus 10 plus 7x minus 6 equals 180. First, I'll combine like terms. 4x and 7x would be 11x. 10 minus 6 would be positive 4. And on the other side, 180. To get this by itself, I'm going to subtract that 4 from both sides. 180 minus 4 would be 176. And then divide both sides by 11. 176 divided by 11 would be 16. To name the postulate or theorem I used, the relationship identified was same side interior angles, so I would say converse. Same side interior angle theorem. Number 25. Both of these angles are inside the parallel lines on opposite sides of the transversal. That makes them alternate interior angles. The relationship between alternate interiors should be congruent, so I'm going to write an equation where these are set equal to each other in order to figure out the value of x that would make them congruent. We'll start by trying to get the x's by themselves, so I'm going to add this 5 to both sides. And then subtract the 21x from both sides in order to bring those together. 23 minus 21 would be 2. Divide both, and that's going to give me x equals 5. For my justification, establish that these were alternate interiors, so I'm going to use converse. Because again, I'm showing that the lines are parallel. For number 26, this is a bit of an odd one. This one's inside the parallel lines, this one is outside. However, the only case where we see an inside and an outside is with corresponding. These are not corresponding. This is actually a theorem that we don't formally establish a name for, so for my justification, we'll just call this converse no-name theorem. Next, we need to figure out what should the relationship between these two be. Well, I know that this 2x plus 55 has to be the same as this because these are vertical. So whatever this one is, this one has to be 2. These make interior angles. Well, all same side angles are always supplementary, add to 180. So I'm going to set an equation where they're equal to 180. To get x by itself, we'll combine like terms first. 2 and 3 makes 5x. 55 and 65 would be 120. And on the other side, 180. Subtract my 120 off on both sides. 180 minus 120 would be 60, divided by 5. And 60 divided by 5 would be 12. For my justification, because we haven't really given a name to this, I'm just going to call this converse, and then because we moved this over, we could say same side interior angles. That's good enough for me. For 27 through 32, we have are the lines P and Q parallel? Indicate why or why not by giving the appropriate postulate or theorem. For all of these questions, what we need to do is figure out what the relationship should be and then see if our two angles meet that relationship. Just to get a head start, I'll highlight all the parallels and transversals. Okay, for number 27, we have these two angles which are inside the parallels and on the same side of the transversal. That makes them same side interior angles. Same side interiors should be supplementary, and in this case they are. Because they met the relationship they were supposed to, that means lines P and Q are parallel. So our answer would be yes, and our justification would be converse. Because anytime we show the lines are parallel, same side interior angles. For 28, these two are corresponding. Top left, top left. Corresponding angles should be congruent. These are not. Number 29. The angles are inside the parallel lines on opposite sides of the transversal. That makes them alternate interiors. Alternate angles, interior angles should be congruent, and this picture is showing me that they are. 65 is congruent. This would be converse. Alternate interior angle theorem. For 30. These two angles are in the same intersection. If I'm going to show that these two lines are parallel, I need to know something about an angle in the other intersection, on line P. Both of these angles are on line Q, so they won't give me any information about line P. Now, a linear pair should add up to 180, but that doesn't tell me anything about the other line. So I can't say that they're not parallel or not, so I would just say NEI, not enough information. The difference between 30 and 28 is in 28, I definitively knew they were not parallel because these angles should have been the same and weren't. Here, I don't know anything about these angles. Maybe they are the same, maybe they're not. Finally, 31 and 32. These two x's are outside of the parallel lines, and they're on opposite sides of the transversal, which means they are alternate exterior angles. The relationship between alternate exteriors should be congruent, and these two are. If one of them is x and the other one's x, it means they're the same. We may not know what they are, but we do know that it's the same thing. So these did meet the relationship they were supposed to. So yes, they're congruent by converse alternate exterior angle theorem. Finally, 32. Here we have the exact same situation as we did in 30. I don't know anything about any of the angles on P, so there's no way for me to determine if P and Q are parallel. Yes, these do make a vertical angle pair. Yes, they're congruent like they should be. However, because it doesn't tell me anything about line P, I can't determine if something's parallel. Not enough information. Skill 70. Use the image to determine which lines, if any, are parallel. Justify. I will take the same trick for these that I did on the first page. Highlight my two sets of parallel lines, or should I say potentially parallel. And then for each question, I'll just cover up the lines that I'm not using. So the first one says, angle 2 is congruent to angle 4. M is the line that 2 and 4 share. The relationship between 2 and 4 is corresponding. They should be congruent. This is telling me that they are. So they've met the relationship they needed. Because these corresponding angles were congruent when they should have been, that means that the two orange lines, A and B, must be parallel. So we'll say A is parallel to B. And my justification, the lines are parallel. That means I'm going to be using converses. So this would be converse corresponding angles. 34. 1 is congruent to 6. 1 and 6 are in the same intersection. So it doesn't tell me anything about the other lines. They should be congruent because they're vertical, but because we don't have information about any of the other lines, it doesn't tell me if anything's parallel or not. Not enough information. 2 is congruent to 11. 2 and 11 share line A. These are outside of the parallel lines and on opposite sides of the transversal, so these are alternate exterior angles. The relationship between alternate exterior should be supplementary, means they should add up to 180. They should be congruent. And this is telling me that they are. Because they met the relationship that they were supposed to, that means that the two parallels actually are parallel, M and L. So I'm going to say M parallel to L, and my justification, converse alternate exterior angle theorem. 5 is congruent to angle 10. 5 and 10 share line A. They are both inside the parallel lines and on opposite sides of the transversal. That makes them alternate interior angles. Alternate interiors should be congruent, and that's what this is telling me. 5 is congruent to 10. So that means my other two lines are parallel, M and L. Converse alternate interiors, AIAT. Measure of angle 7 and measure of angle 8. First I'll look where 7 and 8 are. They're in the same intersection. Anytime the two angles they give us are in the same intersection, we don't have enough information to show that something is parallel because it's not telling us anything about the angles on the other lines. So this, not enough information.